Zipper rolls out to the right, pitches off to Taylor, and Taylor's to the 20, down to the 15, down to the 10, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Touchdown, Billy Taylor! Touchdown, Billy Taylor! Billy Taylor scored a touchdown from 21 yards out. The crowd goes berserk. It was November 22nd, 1969. That they came to Barry, Michigan, all dressed in maize and blue. The words were said, the prayers were read, and everybody cried. But when they closed the coffin, there was someone else inside. Oh, they came to Barry, Michigan, but Michigan wasn't dead. And when the game was over, it was someone else instead. 11 Michigan Wolverines put on the gloves of gray, and as the organ played the victors, they laid Woody Hayes away. Under center is Wangler at the 45. He goes back. He's looking for a receiver. He throws downfield to Carter. Who's got it better than us? Nobody!
Welcome to the Michigan Man Podcast on Wolverine Sports Radio, a member of the V Sporto Network, and in partnership with SB Nation's Maize and Brew, for Wolverine fans from coast to coast. Go Blue, and welcome to our Nebraska Visitors Edition for this week. I'm your host, Mike Fitzpatrick. With us today is the radio play-by-play voice of Huskers football, Greg Sharpe. Before he joins us, let's get it started with my view from Section 17. I wasn't surprised that we were in a dogfight through most of the first half against Rutgers. They are a tough, disciplined team that likes to run the ball, like us. They had some success early, but the defense made adjustments and shut them down as the game wore on. Our defense was once again outstanding. The offense, I do have some concerns, but overall we did show signs of improvement in the running game, and we didn't turn the ball over this week, and that is huge. We only had 7 offensive possessions on Saturday, and because of our style of play, it might lead some to think the offense isn't as good as you want it to be. Now, maybe some of that is true, but when you have a defense like we do, you don't have to sling the ball all over the yard to win games. You can be methodical and physical, pounding the running game, and use the passing game when you want to supplement the run. That might not be a luxury all year, but it's the way Jim Harbaugh has built the program and this team. I'd like to see us be a little more aggressive in the passing game, and I think we will be as the season wears on. In the meantime, Jim and Sharon are laying the groundwork for November. Be physical up front, impose your will, and use the passing game to keep defenses honest. That's what we did on Saturday and grew more dominant with each possession. It's a good recipe, as we've seen the last 2 years. This Saturday, we leave the friendly confines of the Big House for the first time and visit Nebraska. The Huskers are a vastly improved team under Coach Matt Rule. How improved? Even they're not sure yet, but they know they'll have a much better idea after Saturday's game. At his Monday presser, Coach Rule was asked for his thoughts on J.J. McCarthy.
Well, I think they have a great passing game. He's got tremendous protection, so he's got time and he operates on time. He knows where to go with the football. You play man against him, he goes to the route they think is, that they designed to beat man. He attacks coverages. As I said, he's excellent with his feet too. So he's a dual threat quarterback that plays as a pro style quarterback, but when he needs to, he can run. And he's got poise. The game's never too big for him. So, I've watched a lot of tape on them. I've watched them last year. I've watched them this year, and I think he's. They've beaten 2 3-1 teams. They've beaten 2 teams that are undefeated other than playing them, and they've beat them pretty soundly. So, he's played against good competition. He's just good at everything he does.
Coach was asked about defending Blake Corum and if he reminded him of any other great back he's coached against.
Corum's an excellent player. I don't know who I'd say necessarily. I think he's got elite burst, vision, lateral quickness. He's tough to tackle. I think a lot of people make the mistake. They try, you try to tackle him low, you're going to bounce off his legs. So who that is, I'm not great at those kind of things. I'm sorry, but he possesses a lot of. He possesses a lot of traits that make him hard to tackle and hard to defend.
He was also asked if he prepared any differently this week because Michigan was the opponent.
Yeah, we're going to play every team we play. no one came to the University of Nebraska to not play good teams. We started off with a tough schedule. We played on the road the first game. We started off with had some tough breaks in that game. Had a touchdown before the half. We thought maybe you never heard us complain about anything. We're not here to complain. We're not here to make excuses. We're here to play good football and win. We went to Colorado, top 25 team at the time. Probably still are. I haven't seen it. Played them. We're just going to play every week and battle. So this is a great opportunity. We have good players. We expect our players to play well. The game, this game will be about blocking and tackling, covering, getting open, making throws. So we'll just play it and do that for every week for 8 weeks and see what happens.
One thing is certain: this is a rebuilding year for the Huskers, but they do have talent to work with. My guest today says the Blackshirt defense has not let anyone run on them yet this season. They're number 1 against the run in college football, but they have not faced a running game like they'll see Saturday. With us next is the radio play-by-play voice of Nebraska football, Greg Sharpe. So don't go away. Joining us today is Nebraska football radio play-by-play voice Greg Sharpe. Greg, it's great to have you back again this year.
Good to be on with you. Looking forward to this week's matchup.
I think it's going to be a good one for the Huskers' part. They've won their last 2 games, or 2-2 now, heading into Saturday's action. They beat Louisiana Tech in Lincoln on Saturday, and that was after that weather stoppage of, I think, 55 minutes or so. So it was a nice win for the Huskers.
Well, at this point, when you're trying to rebuild a program, any win's a good one. And so two straight after a couple of heartbreaking losses, particularly the opener in Minneapolis, where Nebraska had a 10-3 lead with 5 minutes to go and could not hang on and ended up losing on a walk-off field goal. But I think they feel like they kind of righted the ship a bit, and they're looking forward to the rest of the season.
Well, there are a lot of good things happening for the team right now. The running game was very good on Saturday, 312 yards on the ground, led by Husker quarterback Heinrich Harburg's 157 yards. Coach Rule had to be really happy with not only Saturday's performance, but the ground game is markedly better than last year, isn't it?
Well, that's where he wants to hang his hat. He wants to be a power-running football team. He wants to play really good defense. They've done that as well, and he wants to be a team, and he even said it at his press conference on Monday that he's really looking at Jim Harbaugh's blueprint at Michigan. Build the lines, be strong, be powerful, and particularly in the Big Ten Conference with the weather that we tend to play in November, I think that's what he wants to try to hang his hat on. And some of those are early indicators of what he's done so far here.
Along with Harburg, Anthony Grant also went over the 100-yard mark, and he's a really good-looking back. We've seen him before. He ran for just under 1,000 yards last year, and he's really the bell cow back for that team, isn't he?
He is now. He wasn't a couple weeks ago, but Nebraska lost 2 backs in the Northern Illinois game, and Gabe Irvin and Ramir Johnson for the year. And so Anthony, it's his show now. He's the most veteran guy there. He had 5 100-yard games a year ago, got one Saturday, as you alluded to, against Louisiana Tech. So kind of in some ways by default, he's back in that number 1 spot for Nebraska. But I think they're comfortable with that because of what he did last year as a junior.
Well, when you're running the ball like the Huskers did on Saturday, you really don't need to air it out that much. But Harburg was 8 for 17. And when you take a look at the passing stats for this year, I think as a team, it's 44 for 83 through the air, 5 touchdowns. And as you said, it's safe to say this team wants to run the ball. That's what they want to be their MO, isn't it?
It is, and yet they'll be the first to tell you they've got to get better and more efficient in the passing game. You've got to be a little bit more balanced than maybe what Nebraska has been in the first month. And part of that's been the shake-up at quarterback. Jeff Sims started the year, got a rolled-up ankle in the Colorado game late. That opened the door for Heinrich Harburg to start the last 2 weeks. Now, I don't know what's going to happen this week. Sims, I think, is nearing to being 100%. He was the off-season acquisition from Georgia Tech. He won the job in camp, so You kind of wonder if he gets healthy, does he get the number one job back? He's probably a better passer than Heinrich Haarberg. So if they get Sims, I think they can maybe try to implement more of the passing game. But they also have had some injuries at the wide receiver spot, which has limited some of their playmaking ability on the outside. So I think all that kind of combines to why they really relied more on the ground game than they have to try to throw the football.
So at this point, we really don't know who's going to be under center come Saturday.
No.
Well, the offense, whoever's under center, averages just over 21 points per game so far this season. And I know that quarterback shuffle hasn't helped it at all. But would you say, especially as compared to the last couple of years, you're seeing improvement each week from this offense?
I think it's been, well, obviously, when you open with Minnesota on the road and Colorado on the road, then you come home and play two non-Power 5 teams. It's a little hard to gauge how much better you've gotten. The competition has not been as good the last 2 weeks as it was the first two. So I think that's hard to gauge how much improvement they've made. I think the offensive line's feeling a little bit more cohesiveness now than they did a couple of weeks ago. But because you've rotated quarterbacks, because of those injuries at the running back spot, I think it's going to be a work in progress probably the entire fall for Nebraska on the offensive side of the ball.
Well, we've talked about how well Heinrich Haarberg has run the ball the last 2 weeks. Anthony Grant now the bell cow, as you said. Who else on this offense we're going to see on Saturday, can you name it, are contributors?
Yeah, two guys. Billy Kemp's a really shifty wide receiver. They've used him in the jet motion package quite a bit. He scored a couple of touchdowns here in the last few weeks. Thomas Fedoni is turning into a nice weapon at tight end. He's had touchdown catches each of the last 3 games for Nebraska. So those are some of the guys that want to try to get their hands on the football, and they can certainly help the passing game moving forward. So those would be the two guys I think that Michigan fans will want to kind of focus in on Saturday's game.
Well, on the other side of the ball, Coach Rule brought in Syracuse defensive coordinator Tony White, and he's installed the 3-3-5 defense, which we're seeing a lot more of these days in college football. Michigan's seen it once so far this year. The D seems to be adjusting pretty darn well, though, playing very well. I think number one against the run in the nation right now, aren't they?
Yeah, they've really done a great job at choking off teams' running game and really making teams one-dimensional moving forward. And one of the secrets is they played so many guys. I mean, the first drive of the season against Minnesota, 18 different players saw snaps on defense. So they are rotating bodies in and out, trying to keep people fresh. And I think that will really pay off for Nebraska the deeper into the season it goes. But they're building some depth. They've got some good playmakers on that side of the ball. The one thing they have not done much in the first 4 games is force many turnovers. They did get one late in the Louisiana Tech game, but I know that's for Coach White, that's kind of an area that he wants to see improvement is them forcing some mistakes by the other team. Obviously, they're doing a great job in tackling. They've had very few missed tackles in the first 4 games and have been pretty stingy letting teams find the end zone in the first 4 weeks. Even the Colorado game where it was a 0-0 game with 5 minutes to go in the first half against Shedeur Sanders and that attack. It did get away from them a bit in the second half, but they weren't helped out by the offense who turned the ball over 3 times deep in their own end to let it short fields to the Buffaloes. But it's been a really solid team on that side of the ball. And again, that's what Coach Rule wants to hang his hat on. Play solid defense, run the football, be a physical team. And he's implementing that here in year 1.
Well, the D got some big performances on Saturday. Omar Brown had 8 tackles. Isaac Gifford added 7 stops and a pick. John Bullock and Deshaun Singleton both added 7 stops. Who else is playing well on that side of the ball we can watch for on Saturday?
Yeah, you mentioned those safeties. Brown and Singleton have been really good for Nebraska. Quentin Newsom's been a 3-year starter for the Huskers at corner. I think he's one of the better corners in the Big Ten Conference. And up front, Ty Robinson and Nash Huntmaker have been very disruptive for them. Ty's been a 3-year starter along the defensive front, and Nash got a lot of playing time a year ago. Didn't start. He's now starting and playing pretty well for the Huskers. They also had been getting to the quarterback until this last week. They didn't have any sacks against the Bulldogs, but they've been racking up a lot of sacks the first 3 games, but then got denied in that category this past week. So really from front to back, they played very well on that side.
Well, Greg, I think everyone around college football would agree that Matt Rule was really a great hire for Nebraska. I like listening to the guy talk. The Huskers have a lot of talent on that roster. Would you consider, or do Nebraska fans consider this to be a major rebuilding job, or do you think he can get that program on track very quickly?
Well, I think it is a rebuild. I'm not sure I would term it major, but I think it is a rebuild. But we're in certainly a different time and age of college football where maybe it doesn't take 3 to 4 years. With the transfer portal, you can plug some spots every off season, and certainly Nebraska did that. 62 new players on the roster this year for Nebraska. That's with the incoming freshmen and then the transfer portal. So within about 2 years, you ought to be able to really overturn your roster and make it move forward a little bit. So I think, in the past where you would want to give a football coach 3 to 5 years to kind of put his mark on a team, I think that timeline's been sped up now with the portal. But so, yeah, there's no doubt when you've had the records Nebraska's had the last 4 or 5 years, it is a rebuild. But there is some talent here. There are some things to work with. And I think Matt Rule probably when he got here saw that there was maybe more to work with on the defensive side of the ball than there was on the offensive side.
Well, Greg, looking ahead to this Saturday, I think Michigan fans, for one thing, are just happy it's not another night game like it was 2 years ago down there because, man, that was a humdinger, went right down to the wire. It is absolutely one of the toughest atmospheres in college football, one of the best, and it has been for a long time, hasn't it?
Had sellouts here every game since 1962. The fans love their Husker program, and they certainly have gone through a dip in the play, kind of like what Michigan fans probably were going through 10 years ago. So, but they're hanging in there with this team. They love Coach Rural, what he's doing, and they'll be fired up. They'll be in their seats clapping loud for the Cornhuskers on Saturday. And obviously, a huge challenge is Michigan is one of the premier teams in college football right now. But you never know. That's why we line up and play every week.
Oh, absolutely. Final question before we let you get away, Greg. This Saturday's game, it's huge for both teams. I mean, when you get 12 cracks every year, they're all big. Nebraska would, of course, goes without saying, love to bring down number 2 Michigan at their place. I think this is, for both teams, another good and maybe the first big barometer game.
Well, for Michigan, obviously, first road game, right? I mean, they haven't left the state yet to play a game, so that's always a little bit different. I think they saw a team kind of like Nebraska did the Wolverines last week in Rutgers. I would put Rutgers and Nebraska kind of on the same arc. And that was a pretty competitive game until the defensive score kind of opened things up on Saturday for the Wolverines. So, for Michigan fans, what you saw last week from Rutgers, that's kind of similar to what you're going to get from Nebraska this week, but just having to wear the road jerseys for the first time this year.
Well, it's going to be a lot of fun. Saturday afternoon, 3:30 kickoff, 2:30 p.m. Central Time down in Lincoln. Here with us today has been the radio play-by-play voice of Nebraska football, Greg Sharpe. Greg, always great to have you with us, and we appreciate your time.
Appreciate it. Thank you.
On Quick Hits today, thanks again to Greg Sharpe for being with us. He is one of the good guys in this business. On Thursday, we'll be back with our Michigan Game Day show. We'll have the latest injury news, some game day notes, a look at the weather for Saturday down in Lincoln, and my thoughts on this week's game. Our guest will be beat writer Aaron McMahon from M Live, so make sure you join us. That does it for our Nebraska Visitors Edition. Have a great Wolverine week, everyone. I'm your host, Mike Fitzpatrick. Until we meet again on Thursday, take care, and as always, go blue. Thanks for joining us today on The Michigan Man, here on Wolverine Sports Radio, a member of the V-Sporto Network, and in partnership with SB Nation's Maize and Brew. Our listener lines are open 24/7 for your calls at 313-263-4842. That's 313-263-4842. Or email us at themichiganmanpodcast@yahoo.com. That's themichiganmanpodcast@yahoo.com. The Michigan Man Podcast is produced at the studios of Robin Lynn Productions, Allen Park, Michigan, and is not affiliated with the University of Michigan. Go Blue!